Hello everyone, my name is Justin Bender and I directed Life on the Funny Farm. We decided to open this film with a dedication slide to Finn, the sulcata tortoise who belonged to Pink Magnolia Farms. Finn came to the farm about a month before filming as a rescue and was unfortunately injured due to just life on the farm. And it kind of goes along with the basis of what the film was about to begin with, and that's the sanctity of life and death on the farm. Every day, living on a farm, dealing with farm animals, you're faced with the creation of life and the possibility of death. The original intent of this film was to cover life and death on the farm, based on a hen on the farm who would peck at you anytime you entered the hen house. After a couple days of this repeated behavior, the actress would return to find the hen had hatched chicks. So all along, she had been protecting her eggs. However, during filming of primary, a rat or a chicken snake had gotten to the eggs and killed all of the babies. So I had to quickly regroup and figure out how to reattack this. I still wanted to focus on the sanctity of life and death on the farm, and I was inspired by a BBC short film a friend of mine sent me where they took the animals in the wild and put voices over them. I started writing out a new script and had to include as much original footage as was shot because, like us humans, the animals change. Our American mini pigs had blown their coats. We had also altered the sows' diets to help them gain weight. Another factor was that when originally filmed, we had gone through a few straight days of rain. Over the past 2 months, we hadn't gotten hardly any rain. The actress I originally scheduled to play the part took another gig down in Florida during the week we were shooting primary film. So my wife was a trooper and she stepped in at the last minute. It took her about a day to get comfortable being in front of the camera. I ended up scratching almost everything from that first day of filming that we shot and using primarily just the second day's film. Because on the first day she struggled with just looking at the camera, and the scene where she came out of the back room with the dogs, she would just walk up, and even as she turned to the back door, she'd be looking at me or looking at the camera, and it just wasn't natural. So by the second day, though, she had gotten a whole lot better and had the concept down of what she needed to do as an actress. The same thing happened when we got out to the barn. She'd come in the gate and just stare at the camera or look back at the camera. And again, the same thing when we had to reshoot the scenes. An animal may be there, wasn't there, was doing something different, turned a different direction. So it was a real challenge. The dog scene where she came out of the back room, I knew I wanted it to be all one take. And throughout the film, I always set the camera slightly higher than her eye line. And I wanted to do that to create an overview of the scene. I didn't want to be up above her looking down on her. I just wanted to be slightly above her eye line so that the viewers were always getting a little bit of an overview of what she was doing and what was going on with the animals. I did this everywhere through the film. And again, just not to be looking down on her, but to be making sure that we were kind of just seeing an overview of the scene. Ahead of time, I already knew there was some film I wanted to capture. One scene was Dallas in the feed bin. She was a bottle baby who got spoiled, and she still doesn't think that she's a goat. She doesn't like to stay out there in the pens with the other animals, and she'll jump into and stand in the feed bin at any chance you give her to get extra feed. She still likes to come in the house and run around with the dogs, but we can't keep a diaper on her like we used to, so she's got to stay outside. The other shot that I wanted to capture was the pigs torquing, as we call it. They like to put their flank up against you and start scratching on you. Sometimes they'll just plant their butts in the ground and start jerking back and forth, scratching their hind ends. All the lighting I used for this was natural lighting. I did make use of some bounce boards to redirect lighting in a few spots, but overall, Nature's Softbox took care of most of what I needed due to it being cloudy during the second morning of shooting. The only struggle with the lighting would be when the sun would break through the clouds, throwing the exposure of the scene way off. There's a running joke at Pink Magnolia Farms that there's a neon sign hung somewhere out in the woods facing out from the farm that only the animals can see. That sign says, "Free food here." You'll notice on the feeding scene that Tom the heritage turkey was nowhere to be found. I left it up to the viewer's mind to figure out what he was doing, if he was off looking for Suzanne or what. During the month following primary shooting, I was making dinner and I looked out the back window and I saw this turkey pacing our back fence line. He was underfed and was badly beaten up, I assume by the wild turkeys in the area. I opened a section of fence and he came right in. After a couple weeks of fighting with our rooster, they decided to cohabitate and he became part of the farm. The rooster realized he wasn't there to steal his girls. He became the catalyst for how I wanted to shape the film now. So back to the free feed thing. We've had numerous animals show up here at the farm. One of the dogs was that way. She had been shot in the head by somebody and the projectile was still in her head, but she was alive. The Humane Society of Louisiana paid for her surgery to remove the projectile and she never left. Back to the original premise of the film, which was life and death on the farm. I had another surprise during post-production editing. I came out one morning and couldn't find Penelope, our pink pig, anywhere. I looked and looked for her, and I finally found her back behind the chicken coop, having built a nest out of straw and sticks. She had given birth to 5 little piglets, 4 gilts and 1 boar. 2 of the gilts passed away during birth, and we still have 3. For anyone who has yet to work with live animals as actors, I highly recommend you try it. They're a pain in the hind end. Reshooting scenes with the animals was very difficult when it came to editing. While I had a shot that I really wanted to use because the acting was better or the lighting cut through the barn just right to give me the highlights that I wanted, I ended up with an animal going a different direction or not even being there any longer in the shot. So it made things look like jump cuts and there wasn't any fluidity to the scenes. I also fought animals coming at me while I was operating the camera on sticks. They all like to be making physical contact with you. The pigs like to scratch their bodies on you. The goats like to be scratched or chew on your clothing. They also like to come up and see if you have any food. They'll come up and they'll press their head against you and rub their head on you just to let you know that you're part of the pack. Many times shots were simply ruined because I made noise behind the camera, pushing the animals away or jumped the camera or they shoved the sticks. It was quite an interesting affair. I've gotten quite a few questions on how I did the voices for the animals. I watched the film numerous times and started writing out what my wife and I thought the animals are thinking.
How are you doing today?
Keeping it kid-friendly. There's plenty of birds and the bees talks that could happen around the farm, so I had quite a few bits of film that I just couldn't use because it would be purely adult entertainment. Back to the voices. After watching the scenes and recording vocal parts, I imported them into Premiere. I cut and aligned them with the footage where they belong, then started the fun part. Everything I use to alter the voices can be found in the effects workspace. Twirl down the audio effects and twirl down time and pitch. I applied the pitch shifter. This was the primary effect that was used, although I stacked a combination of multi-band compressors, chorus flanger, reverbs, dynamic processing, stereo expander, and even the guitar suite. By stacking effects and changing the order of their processing, you can create some pretty wild sounds. I didn't want the animals to sound like some crazy aliens or something just way too nuts. So I didn't go too wild with too many of the effects. I created the sound that I wanted for Tom. I saved it as a preset and I applied it to all of his vocal parts. Then I proceeded down the list one by one through all of the animals. A few times I found myself having to go back and tweak something as I felt the vocal of one animal sounded too much like the other. I wanted a clear definition between all of them. I also had to go back and remove some vocals as I felt there was just too much going on in the scenes or it really didn't contribute to the scene.
Girls, has anybody seen Suzanne? I haven't seen her this morning. Hey, girls.